all right. We'll forgive you.
I was hosting the entertainment club beginning.
Right? Gets a little distracting.
Oh, it says we're now on YouTube.
I believe we should be.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's call to order the Commissioners of Poolesville meeting June 1st, 2020. And Jim, would you like to go ahead and do our Pledge of Allegiance tonight?
I will, but it's on a BlackBerry, so there's a chance there'll be a delay.
Ah,
Where's your computer, for God's sakes?
I just tried to sign on through my iPad, and it's requiring a couple levels of ID that I've never used before. So back to the phone. Anyway, that's okay. We got backup here. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
One
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
thank you. I think it's probably always on some kind of a delay.
Yeah.
We need more choreography of that one. We're going to start doing that.
Right. Got it.
So next on the agenda are our reports, and really the only thing that I wanted to say tonight was that this has just been such a strange time. It's been a really trying time for some. It's been an extremely scary time for a lot of people here in Poolesville, in our state, in our country. Really everywhere on our globe. And it may sound kind of trite, but we really do need to keep metaphorically leaning on each other in order to protect each other and ourselves. And I think we need to recognize that we are all going through something right now, though it may look different from person to person. And of course now, it seems like the world's on fire now. We have a global pandemic that's, already been highlighting a lot of the divisions that are already present, in our country, and violence now has unfortunately reared its ugly head, and it's come in the form of one of our oldest foes, institutional racism. I know tensions are really high for a number of reasons. I'm feeling it just walking around in Poolesville, but it's my hope that the violence that we're hearing about won't be something that we're seeing, that it's subsiding, that it will be more peaceful protest, like I know has already been going on today, and I hear that there's more happening tomorrow and the next day, and ultimately really what will remain will be action for change. So today is actually National Day of Remembrance, honoring the over 100,000 victims of COVID-19 just in our country. So I'd like to just take a short moment of silence to remember those fallen, to also remember those who've fallen due to senseless violence, and just to put out some hope for some healing for all of us. Thank you so much for that. That's really all I had. Val, did you have any announcements or reports that you wanted to?
I don't actually. Yep.
And Commissioner Ratigan?
Yeah, the only thing I have is I forwarded you all an email from Sarah Rogers about historic Poolesville signage. And maybe tonight's not the appropriate time to put it on the agenda. Seth, I copied you on it. Maybe the next meeting we discuss it. To refresh your memory, Sarah Rogers Heritage Montgomery indicated that we could get a grant covering, I think it was half of the costs of what would be 3 signs. she sent me, I asked for suggested language. She sent me a copy of Brookville's sign. And she said that's kind of the generic, cookie cutter language that they use. Looks good to me.
Yeah, so why don't we agendize this for our
Yeah.
next meeting, Martin?
And for whatever reason, I'm not getting those emails on the .gov, so we'll have to
Okay.
look into it tomorrow, but
Okay. I can forward it to you right now, Val. So
yeah,
just,
that would be great.
just so you have it.
Yeah, thanks.
I have it for the next agenda.
Okay,
I'll put it on there.
great. Thanks, Seth.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kubikowski.
So you have to unmute Jerry.
Yes, I was reelected as president of Montgomery County chapter of MML. William Pollock, who's Mayor of Glen Echo, is the vice president. Martin Croson, who's out of Chevy Chase, is the secretary. Julian Mansfield was reelected as treasurer. And then as our at-large members, part of our executive board, there's Jana Coe, Chevy Chase, Holly LaRish of Barnesville, Monique Ashton of Rockville, and Marnie Shaw of Somerset. And then in the same vein is on the 10th, next Wednesday, time to be announced. We are going to have a conference call for all Montgomery County MML chapter members with Dr. Stoddard, who works for the Montgomery County Emergency Management Administration, and on the COVID-19 related expenses from FEMA, MEMA, and the county. And then there's going to be some of the chapter members are going to meet with some council member staffs to find out what objections some of the council staff members may have with respect to increasing tax duplication payments from the county to municipalities. We've heard from Council Member Friedson that he said that some staff members objected, and we're just trying to find out what those objections are, and hopefully we can eliminate them. So anyways, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Jim.
The only thing I have to say is on the agenda, I don't see where we have our committee reports. And so I guess we're gonna go do those maybe under town manager's report, because I'll do a fair access report then.
Okay, sounds good.
Unless I'm missing it somewhere and I'm looking at it.
We just took them off because we weren't holding them, and so we should
Mhm.
probably put them on for starting next.
Yeah, because do we have a Zoom planning commission meeting coming up, or is that
Next
That's
Wednesday.
correct. And Parks and Rec.
Parks Board.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'd taken them off because none of the sub boards were meeting.
right now? Got it. All good. Yeah, we're still meeting. So I'll have a report later on.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, next on our agenda is public comments, and I'll just read what we actually have on our agenda, since all our meetings are now virtual meetings. To be able to speak at public comment, you will need to contact Town Hall by noon on the day of the meeting to obtain access for the meeting. So has that happened? Has anyone?
I have not had anybody communicate with me for
Okay.
comment.
All right, so next on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any discussion? The minutes of May 18th, 2020? Hearing none, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes from May 18th, 2020 as they were presented.
I'll second.
Great, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Great, motion carries. Old business is next on our agenda. And the first thing there is adoption of ordinance 215, which is our fiscal year 21 budget.
I don't have much to present. We've been through the budget a few times and we had the public hearing last month. And at this point, it's just the adoption of the ordinance, which is in your packet. If you have any questions, I can take those. But before you is the ordinance that would adopt the budget as we've discussed and has been presented at the public hearing. I've received no further feedback from the public, and this would be the time for you to formally adopt and vote on the budget.
Well, I have a question is if we're going to have to pay more, because it's later on in the budget with respect to picking up some of the costs of the recycling, town recycling from Bates because of the, basically China's no longer taking our recycling or whomever is. I'm wondering if maybe we need to look at reducing another part of the budget, specifically the grant committee or hiring a grant manager at $30,000. I mean, if we're going to have to pay more money out, it seems like we need to balance what we're paying for, having to pay for this additional costs because of the recycling problem.
My only initial response to that is, the budget is an act of the town commission and you can determine how you want to go forward with that. I just think that depending on what we look for in the future, I mean, it's not guaranteed we're going to spend that $30,000. We've had this discussion a few times. But if there's somebody can work on our behalf to get us, a fair amount of money at, an 80% reduction because our match is only 20%, that doesn't seem to be a bad deal. I guess what I'm saying is the return on investment from that $30,000 may be exponentially more than what we spend on it. And, with the light of things and where the budget is, I mean, we may not end up spending a portion of that because we might want to be careful about what our match is and where that 20% comes from. But I do think we should keep ourselves open is the only thing I think.
I would agree with you with respect to normal times, or this isn't normal times, and the recovery that's been forecast. And if you saw the presentation during the state's Board of Revenue, they're looking at it like a Nike swoosh. And I think the last time I reported that, the state's going to lose money depending on how bad you believe or how long, how severe the dip is going to be and how long prolonged the recovery is going to be. So I'm just concerned that, with that in mind, I don't know if the state's going to have a lot of money or some of these other places are going to have a lot of money to issue grants. And I'm getting more mail from charities saying, during these different times in COVID-19, we need your help more than ever. So, I mean, that's my point, and I offer it up.
Is there any other discussion?
Seth, is it possible for you to summarize what the differences were as a result of the most recent budget discussions we've had? What are the changes, and was there any feedback from anything that we've had from public hearings or any of the residents?
There was no feedback from generally any of the public or residents in that regard. I think the biggest change we talked about last time was regarding the bonus discussion. Clearly, we talked prior to that some other budgetary cuts. Some of them are true cuts, and some of those are delay in spending as well.
Okay.
Into out years. So
good enough. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
And really just kind of go to two parts here. One really quick is, since we do a pay as we go, we do have some dollars set aside, that could potentially be matches. And Jerry's right. I mean, these are tough times. The state has cut a fair amount of things, but there are certain elements like the Chesapeake Bay Fund, which is set aside in a lockbox more or less. So there are certain funding sources that are, shall we say, not discretionary or not as capable to be available for cuts. But, it does look like a lean year, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I want to be agile, I guess is my only point.
Cool. Thanks, Seth.
Yep.
Good.
I can respect that, Seth.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of the work that you put into this, Seth.
Drafted our
I know
budget.
it's been a lot, and you've had to make a lot of changes. I appreciate it. Do I need to read this?
You don't have to read this in total. Jay, she doesn't have to read it in total. No, we've already done,
Okay.
because you've done that one reading at the public hearing. You just need hopefully we can get a first and a second and a couple votes.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we pass the approved budget.
I'll
Thank
second.
Great. We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. Again, thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
Our next topic under old business is our National Gun Violence Awareness Day proclamation. So this was a proclamation that Jerry put on the agenda last meeting, and a number of us wanted to make some changes to it, which I made several changes to it, which you all saw that came through with the original packet for our agenda tonight. Mainly the essence of the proclamation was calling for the first Friday in June to be called the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And Martin even amended it more, and we've got it down to kind of a 2-paragraph proclamation now. And so that's where it's at now. And if there's any discussion, or if anyone wants to make a motion to adopt it.
I just have a question. You say it's a 2-paragraph, but yet there's a lot more whereases on my copy.
So I apologize, it did go out late this evening.
Can you check your email right now, Jerry?
Who's it from?
Well, probably from me, and I also sent a text message with the text of it in a photograph.
And I also tried to put it in the proclamation format, so you should have an email from myself as well.
Wait a second, let me see.
I mean, I could go ahead and read it if that would just make things easier.
Why don't you just go ahead and read it rather than me sitting here fishing? Because I quite frankly, hold on, let me just one other. No,
So-
I don't see it. I don't.
Okay.
I apologize, but I don't.
Me neither.
Let me read it. It's pretty short at this point.
Okay.
National Gun Violence Awareness Day proclamation. This proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the town of Poolesville, to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the commissioners of the town of Poolesville condemn the tragedy of senseless gun violence by declaring the first Friday in June, June 5th, 2020, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day, proclaimed this first day of June 2020.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it's political. It sounds good to me.
Right.
I hope it does, Martin. You wrote it.
Well,
Yeah,
He's now cheerleading for it.
and Carrie
No,
cleaned it
that's
up.
okay. That's okay. I get it.
Carrie cleaned it up, so.
Okay.
yeah, I
got it.
think at this point, it seems acceptable. I think as long as we steer clear of taking a political stance one way or the other.
Agreed.
You know, Jay, do you see any issues with this?
No, this is fine. Just your discretion.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I'm okay with saying that I am willing to recognize the day as a day of, understanding that gun violence is not acceptable. I'm certainly not taking any stance on gun ownership in any way or how particular people use them in their leisure. I'm simply acknowledging,
As long as it's for lawful purposes, right?
yeah, I mean, we're not a political party. We're a nonpartisan, municipality, and I don't want us to start getting involved in, political decisions in any way.
I
So
agree.
I think this is acceptable.
I
You
make a-
guys, I'm going to go on record too. I'll be voting no in a couple minutes whenever we vote on it, but I'm only voting no on behalf of the fact that I don't feel like we're elected by our residents, and I don't feel like our residents have made their opinions clear enough to me to sit there and make a decision to advocate for what is really a political movement. And I don't think it belongs on our agenda. I never thought it did. I don't know why it's on there still. Of course, I'm totally against gun violence, and I'm in favor of many other active groups that are out there trying to promote nonviolence. But it just doesn't belong on our agenda. It never should have been on there. I think it's silly that it's on there, but it doesn't mean that I don't support the movement itself or the fact that I'm in any way, shape, or form a supporter of gun violence or anything like that. But I just want to make it clear. I'm going to vote no because we've never taken a stance like this before. I don't want to take a stance on it now. I don't feel like I can represent our citizens the proper way by taking what is a political stance, because this has been created by a political group. So
And my
So
only
if-
issue with it is that it was not brought to the attention of our board by the residents of Poolsville. It was brought to our attention by an outside entity.
Yeah.
And Carrie and I discussed that today in great detail.
Yeah.
I definitely want to recognize the issue of gun violence, and I don't have a problem
Absolutely.
doing that. But it is a little slippery. I'm not going to lie. It's not my favorite thing that we're going to do. I certainly don't want to seem as though I'm not in favor of recognizing the gun violence in our country, but I definitely also don't feel that it belongs on an agenda that was brought from an outside entity, another mayor from another town.
Well, keep in mind that the way it was originally written has completely been changed.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing political about it. I mean, if Mothers Against Drunk
Right.
Driving came for a proclamation where we say no, it doesn't belong on our agenda. I mean, it's simply saying we don't like gun violence. I mean, it's not saying you shouldn't be in favor of the Second Amendment. It's not saying, taking no stance on any of that stuff.
Yeah, no, and this is what Carrie and I talked about this in great depth today, Martin. The whole thing for me is that it didn't come from the town of Poolsville residents. It came from outside. And so there is, Jim and I haven't had a chance to talk about this, and you and I haven't really either, but it did kind of come, it came from an outside entity. It didn't come to us. Now, if a resident, if some residents came to us, maybe that would be a different story. I mean, I think I'm okay with the way, you're right, that it's been rewritten. And I think I can get on board with that part. But it is a little uncomfortable for me, a little.
We did have a email to all of us by a lady, I can't remember her name or where that email is, who requested, that we support it. Now, I think you're right. It was political. It was asked by another mayor, asked us to, if we would consider it. That's what he asked for. And I said, I was agnostic on it. Jim's brought up some points. Valerie, you brought up points, but I think the way it's rewritten, it is non-political. It's just a statement that we don't want to see people getting hurt through gun violence. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think it hurts us at all. And I think it shows us that we are concerned about our fellow man and residents. So all this talk seems to me we're getting wrapped around the axle for something that when Martin rewrote it, I think it's excellent the way it is. And I thank Martin for doing that.
Yeah, and I hear everyone's point. I really heard a lot of Val's points that she said to me today. I do think that now that we have rewritten it, we've sort of made it more something that's palatable for our community, and is at this point is sort of a more smaller gesture by this body.
Yeah.
So would anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the proclamation.
I'll second.
There you go.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Motion
you, Martin.
carries. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
New business. And I believe that we have Mr. Kettler joining us. So we were going to go ahead and move item number 3, the Kettler 4 lines proposal to up to number 1 to accommodate him. Is
Yes,
that happening? Okay.
Let me bring Mr. Kettler in on this topic.
There he is.
Hello, Tom. I guess what I'll do is just go briefly over my staff report that I provided to you. You see the attachments in your packet that was provided to you. Essentially, simplest point, you're all familiar with this development and the fact that it abuts the beauty spot. And he's requesting us as a town to support a letter to Councilmember Friedson's office to have a couple changes at the beauty spot that may be in keeping with the neighborhood surrounding a little bit. So there's basically 3 requests he has. 1, changing the backup beepers. They're not quite as loud. Changing the existing lighting now that projects out, known as wall packs, that project out and across. He'd like those changed from that to an LED light that shines down, so there's not as much glare across the site. So it's noise, the glare. And the third item, which I've outlined, is changing the hours of the beauty spot. He recommended instead of it starting at 7 a.m., it start at 9 a.m. and go to 3 p.m. I put in my staff report that the number of hours really shouldn't change, and that if anything, it should start at 8 a.m. and go to 4 p.m. But clearly, I've listed 3 actions, 1 with multiple sub actions. Everything that you review these changes, you can accept his letter, you can amend his letter, you can reject the letter, you can leave things as they are, and then you just need to vote on whatever you do. So everything from doing something to just saying it's fine as it is. And you see a couple of my suggestions. 1 and 2 don't seem too unreasonable, which is basically changing the lightings and the beepers. And I think the time is a little bit more fluid discussion that I suspect you all want to have a deeper discussion. But that's my staff report. If there's any questions on it, I can maybe take those before we move to Tom.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the first two changes involving lights and beepers, Tom, would you be covering that financially?
We are prepared to help out with the cost or pay if we need to. We just want at least, the reason, and I appreciate opportunity to speak tonight, and nice to see all your sweet smiling faces tonight. No, we're offering to help pay for that. There's been there's been about a 2-year or maybe longer history. I've been working on this issue sort of behind the scenes with the county, and I'm only coming to you all because the county, as you could probably see from my cover letter to Seth, has been pretty non-responsive to anything and everything. So I just thought that this might be a approach that might, move this, issue towards some kind of resolution. But yeah, to answer your question, Martin, we'd be willing to kick something in or pay for the whole thing if we need to, because I don't think it's a very expensive item. It's just a matter of getting them engaged to say, hey, yeah, we'll do this.
They haven't given you any response at all to these 3 items?
These 3 items, we haven't specifically gone back to. There's a again, by way of background, I had met with Wade about a year ago, Wade and Jerry, and I had met with 2 or 3 of the county council members trying to discuss the whole issue. Our approach initially, to be honest with you, is, we have a residential property up against a commercial property, and we'd like the county to try to resolve their sound issue. And one of our reports said that they should build a fairly significant wall, which would take them underneath the violation that they currently have at the beauty spot. And we've kind of given up on that because they've just, they basically have stonewalled us. Now we're trying to take a more conciliatory approach where we'll do something and hopefully they'll do something. So we're willing to put up a 8-foot wall ourselves and pay for that. As we said in the letter, we're also gonna put a bunch of trees up there to try to help buffer it. But when we met with the county council, they kind of said, yeah, that's very interesting, very nice. And, they just, and we never heard back from them. So it's not an issue that will be new to them. The one thing that is new, and it's a little confusing in my write-up, and I should have been more, right, I can explain it now, is the lighting is something that we didn't really know it was an issue till maybe 4 or 5 months ago, or maybe a little longer. I got out there one night, probably going to one of your old meetings one night, and drove back down there, and I said, man. And I think what had happened is there were lights that had been broken, because I called the beauty spot. I said, did you guys put some new lights up there or something? And they go, no, we just fixed a bunch of the ones that were broken. So they have these big, metal, sodium vapor, I think, Seth, I think they are, that are basically shining right at the property. So it's pretty intense. So anybody who eventually lives back there is going to be pretty impacted by it, which is why I think relatively easily they can turn the lights down. I mean, to date, there hasn't really been anybody complaining because there's been nobody back there, they've been just shining out on a big field.
I ended up having a conversation with Kathy Matthews, who's
Right.
the director for the Up County Regional
Mm-hmm.
Center, and I believe she's actually tuning into our meeting this evening. And what I told her is I understand some of these proposed changes. As Seth said, some of them do seem like maybe just kind of good neighborly changes. But my concern is I just don't want to give the message in any way that we're not still supportive of the beauty spot for our residents, because I think our residents do really love having that facility close by, really in our community. It provides a good resource for folks. So I just, and we just kind of got through a round of discussions with folks concerning the beauty spot and getting some clarification on items that they will take and won't take. And I know our town manager worked with them a lot on changing the website itself, actually, to accommodate the services that are at the beauty spot, to just make it a little bit clearer for our residents. So I just don't want to give them mixed messages that we're not still in favor of utilizing the beauty spot for our residents.
Yeah, we've been very, we're certainly aware of that. Obviously, I've been in it for a long time, and I know, and there's been some misinformation that I've seen on different Facebook pages and stuff. I don't follow it that much, but that we're trying to close the beauty spot. It's never been our intention
to
close the beauty spot, and I it's unfortunate that messaging gets out, but I don't typically engage on these Facebook posts because I just figure it's going to be like a hole that'll it'll go nowhere with. So, but yeah, and that's why we think there's some things that can be done to still keep it operational. And as you all know, it used to be open Saturday and Sunday, and then they just closed it on Sunday. That was long before we even had any discussions with them. So I think the county, obviously, for whatever reason, didn't think the demand was there, or they were trying to cut cost. I didn't really hear the backstory on why they went from Saturday and Sunday only. Saturday, you all may know more about that than I, but.
No, I think they just decided to cut back on hours. They even took away the one up in Damascus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This one is the only one left in,
Especially now, and I apologize, Tom, if you want to say more, I'll wait until you're done.
No, you're right, Jerry. Just, and I didn't mean to talk. I'm not very good at the Zoom. The one up, ours is the last one left in Montgomery County. There was one in Damascus and it closed. I wasn't sure the back history about that, but it's been closed now for some time. So this is the last one out there. So anyway, go ahead, Jerry. I didn't mean to step on you.
Okay, well, I understand from when they closed it, Wade was still town manager, and he told me that they closed it for budgetary reasons, and they were looking to reduce their budget costs, and that was one way to do it. However, I reflect, especially now, with everybody who's at home, and from looking at the people that show up in Lowe's and Home Depot and John's and Tractor Supply, there's a lot of honeydews and happy Harriet homeowners who are going to work, and motorheads out there who are working on their cars. And we used to be able to take our antifreeze and our oil up there, and they took that away. And then we used to take other stuff up there like yard waste, and they said, well, you already have yard waste in Poolsville.
Jerry, I hate to interrupt, but what does it have to do with Tom's request?
Well, what I'm getting to the point is, yeah, you're right, is we don't want to see it going away, and that's the Carrie's point. I don't think we want to see it going away. If anything, it should be open at least a half a day on Sunday. So, but bottom line is, I don't want to jeopardize losing that, because the county seems to keep on taking stuff away from us up here.
Yeah, I would like to see us try to support both sides of this so that we can get a happy medium there. I mean, certainly no one wants to see the beauty spot go away, and we understand the residents' concern. So whatever we can do to make it an amicable partnership, I think is what, we should work on. I think, I don't know how is our support going to get you any better action, Tom? I guess that's the big question.
Tom's request is not out of line at all.
No,
as
I don't
far as
think it
I'm
is
concerned.
either. I
And
don't think
these
it's out of
people-
line.
You're talking about our future residents are going to be the people that are affected by it.
Absolutely.
And the one thing I would say, Tom, and I don't think there's any harm in asking you guys. I don't think we're going to do any damage to us. We've had a lot of dealings with the county over the last year and a half, 2 years. And also too, the state depot is there, which makes it unlikely they would try to pull it out. Although, we know where budget cuts can mean anything. But I was going to ask Tom, in addition to what you've asked for, which I would support the ask, if they just say no, they say no. And I don't think there'll be retribution or trying to take hours away or limit it any more than they've already limited, which they've done some significant limiting on. I would say, Tom, what about a taller fence for you than what you're requesting? How come you only limited it to 8 feet? Would it make sense to have a taller fence?
We could go to a taller fence. At some point, it gets to the structure and the the support system. And as the fence gets taller, you get into wind issues and so on and so forth. And we just
you're basically talking about economics then. 8 foot makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's all.
And just to come in on Tom's point there, to be very clear, he's talking about wind loads. I mean, essentially a fence becomes a big element, and then you start have to considering how big are the footers to support that, because you're gonna get a lot of wind shear.
Right, I'm just talking about that's economics. He can make it stronger if he wanted to make it stronger or bigger or taller and build it to better wind resistance. I'm just asking up front, is 8 foot the optimum size that you want to ask for? Because I think while you have a kind of a comprehensive question you're trying to put out here and you want the commissioners to support it, I want to make sure that we have all of the bases covered on it.
Yeah, I'm happy to go back. I mean, I think 10 would be the absolute max, but keeping in mind 6 is the current restriction, and as you all know.
Understood. Right. I just don't want you to feel like you have to incrementally try and ask for something.
Right.
That
No, I
would make
understand.
any sense for what you're doing. So
I understand. Yeah, the one clarification too on the time issue, and I heard Seth's comment, the time issue in terms of the startup. Right now, they start, as you all know, at 7 a.m. and run till 3 o'clock. The reason we were suggesting or requesting that they go to 9 is as you all know, the county has all kinds of sound requirements. And if I go out on my construction site on 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning and start firing up my equipment and stuff, I get into all kinds of trouble, because that's before their, the weekend startup time is 9, Monday through Friday startup time is 7. So we just kind of think there's a fairness there. And understanding there may be people who are inconvenienced by not being there 7 to 9, but we're certainly willing to add the 2 hours on the back end And we figured people might be loading stuff up between 7 and 9, and then they go from 9 to 5. We'd be all right with that. It's just living in your house at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning, if you've worked all week, and having that machinery fire itself up at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's, we just think it's not going to be a great situation. So that's.
May I ask a question? I thought that the county said they were willing to plant trees along the fence line on their side. Am I wrong on that?
They haven't volunteered to do anything, Jared, that I'm aware of. And frankly, I don't know if they'd have much room there, because if you're familiar with it, there's like a chain link fence that they have for security. And then there's like a Jersey barrier wall. And then right away, you all have been there. And then right away it drops down, there's asphalt, and that's where everybody backs in, drops off their stuff. So.
Well, I would assume too, that like during the winter, if there's a severe storm, that place is going to be humming along all night long.
Yeah.
And like, so I assume that there'd be some provision if something like that was to be agreed upon, that only, normal, like Saturdays would start at 9, which to comport with the county existing noise ordinance. However, in the case of emergency or contingency situations, that, that would be, the county would be absolved of any, whatever.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Jerry. Yeah, we want to be very clear. The snow operation, we're not talking about it. We obviously know it's going to be there. We're going to notify our homeowners that, because we have a very strict disclosure when we go to, so you're right, at 2 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of January, if there's 2 feet of snow, there's going to be action there. And we all recognize that our primary issue, this whole issue that we're talking about, is around the trash operation. That's all. The rest of the operation we're not talking about. We're not worried about it, but it's the trash operation that starts at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning and runs till 3 o'clock. That's the one that we're focused on.
I'd be interested to know what are what are the usual hours of operation for these types of facilities. I assume that the 7 to 3 time was chosen because that's what most folks are wanting. I know my husband, who does a lot of house projects, he has a pretty long honey-do list, and he likes going over there early. So I don't know what the sort of norm is for these kind of facilities.
I thought the noise ordinance, the county's noise ordinance, was you couldn't start work before 7 in the morning on a weekday, and before 8 or 9, I don't recall, on a Saturday or Sunday.
9.
9, and that's the reason, Jerry. 9 o'clock. Valerie says 9 p.m. is where it changes.
9 a.m.
I'm sorry, 9 p.m. Yeah, 9 a.m. Sorry, I got confused.
And is that for residential?
Really doesn't. It doesn't matter. It's the same kind of ordinance that you guys deal with at night when the AHOP stays open. That's why at 9 o'clock at night, unless you have things have to shut down at a certain time, because you can't be producing noise that's generating out to the, to surrounding communities. Whether
It's not just residential, Carrie,
right.
It's across the board.
Right.
So I wonder what the hours are over at King Farm.
Well, nobody else has this operation
Yeah,
other
this
than
is-
Poolsville.
We're the
Nobody
only
else
one
has it,
left.
Right.
I mean, they must be moving machinery around though, over at that
You
facility.
mean at Shady Grove, at
Yeah.
the transfer station?
Yeah.
Well, there's no houses immediately around that area.
Right.
That's the thing. You have that backs up to the metro station on one side, and then there's commercial on the other, and then the old Sears warehouse and the post office behind that, and then the metro station. So
It's 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah, I just looked at the same thing. Yep.
Monday through Sunday. Or closed on Sunday, but yeah.
Well, do we want to move forward with this or think on it, table it for further discussion next week? What is the pleasure?
I mean, I don't see the hurt in asking. I think that we just have to make it clear that, we're trying to create a peaceful environment for both parties. That's all. And I think that's all we want.
So you guys know, I mean, the county watches this very carefully, right? This is not, they don't turn their wheels just because we're going to ask for a certain time frame to change doing business. That's not the way it's been so far, and that's at the highest county levels. They kind of do what they want with the beauty spot. So I'm thankful that we have it. I don't think we're going to threaten it by asking for changes, but I also don't think we should get our heads up. They have a lot of infrastructure built around the beauty spot. And that's one of the reasons why the other ones have gone away, because they're expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the county's end goal is, if they have to have an end goal like this, is to have our residents bring it down county versus having this spot here. It's not cheap to operate it. And I think frankly, we're lucky we have the state depot here, because it does make for an industrial use there. And that helps keep it, I think, in my opinion, it helps keep the fact that it's still there. So I'd be in favor of doing something that kind of bridges the gap, probably 8 to 4 in terms of the hours. And Tom's other requests are reasonable, and we just have to put it out there and see what they'd say.
Or you can make the argument that changing the lights to LEDs and making it more directional would save them some money, in electricity usage. So,
I mean, I like the idea of it, but the county turns slowly, and if
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't have LED lights, these same LED lights at their other facilities, they're unlikely going to install them here.
well,
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned today that, everybody on Spurrier Avenue, other than myself, honestly, is in an uproar over the high school security lights that they've recently put in. They're coming straight into our bedroom windows, 24 hours a day. It stays on all night long. I don't know. What are you going to do? You're going to jeopardize security for, if they, I would hope they would do it for your sake, Tom, but
I hope so too. I'm
Haven't
not
done
afraid,
this
I'm not
before.
afraid to advocate for it, because it is our residents that are going to be affected by it. And yes, Tom knew when he built that facility, when he built his development, that there was a beauty spot there.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we can't ask for making a reasonable accommodation. Also,
think
that
there's-
we're proposing that there's no cost to the county on it as well.
Do we all agree on the changes that Seth made to the hours?
Seth, what were your proposed changes? 8 to 4?
That's correct, instead of 7 to 3.
Yeah.
Same
And
number of hours.
You wanted 9 o'clock, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to at least, to be honest with you, obviously that's the way. And again, back to this letter itself, the reason and I don't want to be presumptuous with the letter, but after having meet with Seth a month or so ago, and then John Strong, we just were discussing it. Seth said, just go ahead and kind of take a crack at a draft letter, because it's a subject that I'm obviously been intimately involved in the last couple of years. So I have no pride of authorship, and you can tear the letter up, rewrite it. Because again, I did want to just go on the record of saying, hey, that's, and Andy Friedson seems to be in terms of somebody with the county that, obviously you all are working a lot with him on the, on the high school issues and fair access and so on and so forth. And he just seems like he might be sympathetic to at least hearing again, because he's heard from me already, but if the commissioners come back and say, hey, we've met with Kettler, we'd like to try to get this, we know you're aware of the issue, so on and so forth. But 9 o'clock, again, the reason for the 9 o'clock is the sound thing. I also do want to clarify one thing. The Damascus facility is still open as a Department of Transportation operation. They just don't do trash there anymore. So it's still, I think they still do
Right.
salt, they'll do other stuff.
They do.
Just so you know, right, just so I'm clear. I didn't want to mislead people about that. So.
Seth, there's no town vehicles or equipment there, right?
No, there's not.
Oh, no.
Okay. That was a question that Kathy had for me, and I thought the answer was no, but wanted to clarify.
So the only thing we just need some consensus on is the hours, and Tom and I can amend the letter, come back to the next meeting and give you a draft that you might want to support or might want to add a little bit more.
So I'm okay with 8 to 4.
me too.
I'm okay with either. It's just, what are they gonna take? What are they going to approve? I'm okay with either 8 to 4 or 9 to 4. My question to you is this, Tom. would you rather, do we feel like if we ask for 9 to 4 and they turn it down altogether, you're not, you get nothing. If we ask for 8 to 4, is it going to be a happier medium? I don't know.
Well,
So-
just to clarify, it would be, just so the hours are the same, we'd be willing to go 9 to 5 versus 7
I
to
see,
3,
yeah.
just to clarify. But the rationale for 9 o'clock is the whole their county's own requirement relative to sound. And we're trying to get it to a point where, other uses would not be starting until 9 o'clock. And even after 9 o'clock, we understand there's still going to be noise issues, but at least it's not going to be so objectionable.
The 3 people that are going to see this and act on our behalf, Andrew, Kathy Matthews, and Greg Assant, we can always tell them, we want to stick with the 8 hours, and that we're looking to see if we can do something. We're looking to see if we can do something that improves the hours for our residents, and either 8 or 9 o'clock would work.
Yeah. So I'm sure with the county, you're going to start getting into things like, employees, 40-hour weeks,
Right.
Yeah, they may want to keep the hours earlier in the day.
yeah. And I'm sure so,
And then, the worry is always like, do they agree to 9 o'clock, but then they don't extend the hours. And so it's a narrower window for our residents to drop stuff off.
yeah, and for the employees that work there, I think there's a bigger, I think
that's
they
why-
have to deal with the 40-hour week. And so they have, shifts that rotate and work that
Yeah.
Saturday to fill in for those extra hours. So,
I like Seth's recommendation, 8 o'clock. And the other 2 things are fine, especially if Tom is pitching in or covering the cost.
Yeah, I think I'd initially like to go and not volunteer to pay for the cost, but just to tell the commissioners, I'm certainly willing to pay for it. I don't want to just say, we'll do if they come back and say, okay, we can do this, but we need some help, it's fine, we'll pay for it. If that makes sense to you all, unless you think I should just go in and say, we'll do everything. So, part of it is they may want to control the process in terms of the lights and so on and so forth. So I don't want to, tell them how to do their business.
I just want to be careful not to give them an excuse to say, let's just shut this thing down. Like it's more of a hassle than it's worth.
Well, yeah, maybe and to your point, Mark, maybe it is better in the draft to just go ahead and say, we'd like the lighting changed and the beepers, and Kettler is willing to, to reimburse the county for whatever expense, mutually agreed upon expense, however we word it.
Yeah.
And
I personally like that approach, but that's just me.
Sounds like a fair approach.
Well, looks like we have some general consensus on this. I guess Tom will draft a letter based on this input. And, go ahead and amend it, and you and I can kind of work from there.
Sounds good.
yeah, on the just so I'm clear on the hours, should we go 8 to 4 or try 9 to 5, or what do you, I know there's varying opinions, so I don't want to, I guess I want to get a sense of 3 out of 5 of which way we should go.
My thoughts are 8 o'clock personally.
Right.
Yeah, we should stick with 8 o'clock, you guys. The county moves in slow ways, but in deliberate ways.
Okay.
And I make you bet they have a darn good reason why they cut it off at 3 o'clock right now.
yeah, I think it's just the employees' schedules. And yeah, I think we need to stick with 8 to 4. I understand your point, Tom, and it's well taken. In fact, I mentioned that today, that, it makes no sense to me either. Why there's a sound ordinance before 9 a.m. yet they're, bringing those trucks in. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just to summarize, I'll rewrite a draft, get it back to Seth. I will, to Jim, to your point, I will do a little bit of homework as to whether, and as you all have a variance for the 8-foot wall coming up the week from Wednesday from Planning Commission. I'll do a little bit of homework between now and Wednesday and see whether it makes sense to, amend that to 10 at which point maybe I would need to pull it back and resubmit it, but you know, we'll try to figure that out. See what makes sense. And partly is just this fence, just to let you know, is going to be on individual property, their properties. It's not going to be adding space. They're going to own it. So part of it's just trying to, the visual of what it's going to look like, and that they need to, they'll be looking back at it. And that's the other reason why we're going to put some trees. There's existing vegetation, but we're going to add trees inside of that to help, do some more buffering against it. Do what we can do on our side.
Go for it, Tom.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody's time tonight.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Tom.
You all stay safe out there.
Good
Thank
seeing
you.
Thank you. So let's go back to number 1, our COVID-19 update.
Certainly, Carrie, do you have anything you'd like to state before I get started?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, certainly. So let me start this off. I'm not going to go. You saw in your packet, I provide you a list of information in here. And so really, you saw all the information I provided and what other communities are doing. I'm certainly not going to go through all those page by page, but generally, we've looked at communities in Montgomery County because clearly we're under the county executive's order, which is a little bit different than the states. We all know that the county has entered phase 1 of reopening. That's in your packet. The details of there. It's been all over social media. In terms of communities within the county, Gaithersburg is going to look at apparently a slow reopening on June 14th. Rockville did this past Friday. I didn't have an opportunity to look to see what that reopening was, if I was bringing everybody back or just augmenting staff a little bit more. And still have some rotation. Laytonsville is waiting for the Maryland order of emergency to end, so the state emergency to end before they make any changes. You can see in the packet, Montgomery County has closed or has canceled their summer camps and are still looking at the health and safety of opening pools this summer, if at all. So that's kind of the general gist of that. And the reason I go through the towns a little bit is, we have to make a decision here in Poolsville about reopening our town hall, which, in my proposal and sort of discussion with my staff is to keep town hall closed, because I think one of the things we've successfully done is provided good customer service at the front. We essentially have a drive-through operation here. We have a curbside essentially services. I haven't heard a lot of complaints about residents not being able to get business done in the community. Folks do call in advance if they need to stop to town hall and get an application or a permit or get other information. So it seemed to have worked fairly well in terms of continuing government operations. And that's just about the public coming here. That's less about how staff is operating at this moment, but it's about the public coming into town hall. But if we did open, town hall, there's a lot of things we'd have to take into consideration, right? The public restrooms wouldn't be open. We still wouldn't have the public meeting room available for use. Make sure we can get, some consistent hand sanitizer supply as well. The public still has to wear masks coming in. I'd have to put up some sort of plastic shield, where Maggie's at for taking information and everything else. You've seen this at many other businesses. So there's some functionality that we'd have to go through in order to try and reopen town hall. And so, unless there's been an issue with it being closed, I'd like to retain that. And I want to implore this piece because I think it's a philosophical element about how I am in operating government, is that government is for the people. We're open to the public, right? And this is their sort of facility, right? They're the tax-paying residents and it's their place to be, right? And so I do struggle a little bit with that idea philosophically that, we are retaining it closed, but there's a health and safety and welfare here because we don't know where the public's been, and vice versa, sometimes even on our side. So there's truly a public health, safety, and welfare element here that I would propose to maintain town hall closed. Initially maybe it's the middle of June, maybe it is all the way to July. But unless you're hearing from residents that they're having a problem, my proposal, at least we stay through, the middle of June and I guess at this point, that'd be almost like June 19th, pick, sort of a Friday, and see what things are there. But that's what I'd like to do with town hall.
I've heard no complaints from anybody, and I tend to defer to your suggestions, Seth.
I
Me
agree
too.
with this.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate how you explained your philosophy too, because I certainly agree that, we don't want our residents to feel like they're being closed off from their local government. But these are strange times, and I think you're making all of the best decisions that you can with the information you have. So,
Yeah, I think if a time comes that there are residents who feel as though they're not getting something they need, being able to access something, we can revisit that. But yeah, I appreciate that as well, Seth. So thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
I agree.
That kind of moves us on to next few other things under the COVID topic. I'm sure most of you've seen the post that I put out last night regarding the parks being opened, and that essentially the only thing's not open at this point is the restrooms, and that there are signs acknowledging that the equipment is not cleaned, and particularly play equipment is not clean. So everybody is essentially using the park at their own risk, but that's clearly notified. So I think that met with a lot of happiness, since we do have a great park system. I mean, we worked hard over the years to establish it, and it's in walking distance to residential neighborhoods. So it's a great amenity to our community. So it's now back open to the residents. June 15th is when I intend to bring all staff back into full operation. The whole purpose was to make sure that the curve was suppressed. The rates are coming down, the hospitalization rates are staying either stable or downward. So that was really the key metric. And so the proposal is that essentially, all town staff will be back in operation on June 15th collectively, just to bring you into that. Restaurant services, this was a little bit of a discussion. Valerie, if you want to jump in a minute, definitely join in. It seems that all the restaurants have figured out any outdoor seating that they might need. They all have some amount of parking space and parking area. If there is any town regulations that typically restrict such activity, we're certainly not going to enforce it. And the nature of what is occurring, we want our businesses to do well. We want them to get as much customer activity as possible. So we certainly wouldn't hinder them at this time, understanding that not only is this extremely unusual, but it's also a temporary thing. And, even if temporary is defined as a year, this is where we're at. So it seems like they've been able to make accommodations.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Seth. And I know I reached out to everybody last week when the governor spoke, and just trying to get ahead of that and make sure that we are understanding of any accommodations. I know that we as a board all want our businesses to succeed. And so I pretty much figured that it would not be an issue, but I wanted to make sure that if anyone had come to us business-wise and brought the subject up, that we were prepared to discuss making accommodations like Bassett's did today in the parking lot. The Mexican Grill may want to use part of their parking lot. I know Cugini spoke to the landlord. They've gotten a barrier wall to put up, fence to put up, and they're going to be using the sidewalk section from the daycare all the way to the bank. AHOP already has a great House of Poolsville, a great area, so I don't think that that's an issue. So I think that, yes, we have to just be patient and see how this is going to play out, and just do whatever we can to make sure that our businesses are succeeding.
Virginia's is going to use, I thought, only to the nail salon.
Oh, maybe it's the nail salon, Jerry. You're right. That daycare is beyond that. You're right. Yep. True.
It's a wonder they haven't asked to use the parking lot across the street from them, across there, because there's a lot of parking in that.
Well, they were actually my big concern, because I was worried that if the landlord did not grant them,
I understand.
the right to use that sidewalk area, that, maybe we would have to intervene somehow, but it seems to have all worked out. I spoke to Barbie and she's happy, so.
Good.
Yeah.
Anything else? Seth?
No, that, under number one, that's all I have. I have more for number two.
I just wanted to add, it looks like we're, for our zip code, we're at 26 COVID-19 cases. And I just wanted to give an update. I had mentioned last time that there was a Poolsville Elementary fifth grader who had been in the hospital for several weeks with the inflammatory syndrome, and he is now home and doing well. So I just wanted to give that update. So cancellation of events is next on our agenda.
Certainly, we've canceled everything in June so far, as we all know. And you are all going to make a determination regarding the summer camp, which has already been pushed back into July. July 7th, if I recall, 6th is when we postponed it to at this point. Now the question becomes, we clearly see where we're at. June 1, the decision day we decided on. We know where Montgomery County is, as I've just explained. And they've clarified their camp regulations, which is no more than 9 camp students, if you will, and 1 adult in that group. So basically, you're going to have an adult or some sort of employee for every 9 children. So,
And to clarify, Seth, I'm sorry, to clarify that, that is for any private camps within the county. The county has canceled all
the
of it.
county has canceled theirs. Correct. The organization that would like to continue their summer camp program is going to have no more 9 students plus the chaperone of the group, if you will. And that's correct. They've canceled theirs. So what that means, functionally for us, we have about 170 camp students in the summer, which means you'd at least have to have 17, staff members for that. And I don't think we have that many on a typical basis. And I understand there's a certain amount of call-in. You're dealing with younger people, first-time job.
Typically have nine, I think, 9.
And then I understand there's a couple call-ins once in a while. So then, you're below that number, right? So we'd not only have to essentially double the number of people we hire, but then ensure that they come every day. And then also we have to make sure that these groups of 10 never interact with another group of 10 in the park system. So functionally, there's a little bit of a struggle there, both from an employment side, management of the people, the students collectively. So it makes it a little challenging. And then, one of these circumstances is you can break 170 down into 17 groups, but are you still violating the order? Because essentially you have more than the 10 as a whole, right? So, and we're just still in phase 1. We all know the county executive is not giving dates and times as to when phase 2 would occur. So, and I'm sure phase 2 is not going to include the number of people we have typically at a summer camp. And then you look at everything that's canceled collectively. I think some of that decision-making, there's the package of decision-making that you have before you.
Well, right now, I don't think, based on what the requirements are, 1 person per 10. And I thought actually it was 2 adults were required for groups of children. But anyways, I don't think we could have a viable summer camp. And depending on when some of these schools and colleges start, if they start early, as I've heard some will do, I don't know if we could get the staff in order to run it. If we could, that'd be different. But like what you said about, whether it's 10 or is it the whole aggregate where we had 170 kids, you need 17 adults to run those, each individual group of 10 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but it does kind of seem like the writing's on the wall there.
Seth, what has Kathy said about staff? What has she said about her head counselors? Are they all still willing to come on if we get started?
I think at least one at this point has found another, opportunity for the summer. But we haven't had this number before. And I will tell you that it was directly from Kathy that I received the information that even of the group we do hire, sometimes you get some call-ins, right?
And
And
vacations, right, you know, these kids' families have vacations. I mean, all of my kids worked at that camp, and, you know, this is kind of what happens is, you know, it's kind of like a rolling, so some week, you know, typical years, if you have 9 or 10 staffers, you're gonna be without 1 or 2 possibly every
Right,
week.
right. You get 8 or 9 every week if you have 9 or
Yes.
10 or 10 or 11.
correct.
So we have 12 staff members, and typically you have a couple who are on vacation every week. So you could get down to as low as 9 is what it is.
I just want to know, like, if we even decided to kick this thing on, are we going to have enough staff? And will it be viable? And I think that sounds pretty questionable right now.
Well, I think we'd almost have to look at it this way, is we'd have to say, how many staff members can we get? And that's gonna determine how many people we can have for camp.
Yeah,
And
we
then-
have to limit.
And
the
it'd be a
number-
first come, first serve, who gets their application in first, till we hit
Mhm.
80, 90, right?
Yeah, I think at this point, we're not going to see that many this year. You know, it's not going to have the momentum behind it like it normally does. So,
No, I
I
agree.
heard-
which would be a
Go ahead,
shame, but
Dan, I'm
it is what
sorry.
it is.
What, Jerry?
No, I heard too, I don't know if it was on the radio today, that some parents are concerned that their children would go to these camps. And although the children may not get the virus themselves, they can be a carrier. And if they
Yeah.
go to a camp and there's another child who is a carrier and they come in contact with them, they can take then the virus back home to their families, which may not be the best thing in the world to have happen.
So in the end, this is probably the compromise, the true compromise here is no camp this summer, but full open on our parks. So at least kids can get out and exercise and be a part of things. That mom and dad could arrange daycare if they have to. You know, let's meet it. It's really meeting it halfway as long as we give some opportunities out there, but decide not to organize a camp. And that hurts. You know, I run a huge camp every year, and we've made the decision not to have it this year at all.
Yeah.
And it hurts. And it's, you know, it's obviously not the best for the kids, not the best for the kids besides health reasons. So we have to pay attention to that. I think it's meeting them halfway is giving them the opportunities, but not necessarily, you know, let's rip the Band-Aid out and call it Band-Aid off and call it what it is for this year and get geared up for next year.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, there hasn't even been the discussion yet of when daycares are gonna reopen.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter-in-law works for Discovery, and right now we don't, you know, we still
no
haven't
dates.
heard from the county.
Yeah.
You know, there is no set dates. So, yeah, I think it's unfortunate, but I think we are going to have to cancel camp this summer.
I agree.
Me too.
So I think at this point, you know, I will go ahead and make a motion to.
Do we need to make a motion on that?
Do we?
I don't really
do
think
we?
so.
We just need consensus, Seth, or?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, we can get by with that, but sometimes it's cleaner with a vote. That way
Yeah.
there's.
I think we should vote on it.
Sorry, Val.
I like to vote if we can kind of, you know,
I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's
let's
just,
vote just for consistency, you know. just-
if only we had a lawyer, he could tell us what to do. I'm just kidding.
Well, you're halfway there. Why would you stop?
All right, I got halted in the middle. All
Sorry
right,
about
so
that.
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and cancel the summer camp rec program through the town of Poolsville at Stevens Park for the summer of 2020.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Sadly, aye.
Very sadly. Any opposed? Motion carries. That is very sad.
It is.
So, yes, that's unfortunate because clearly the community has, you know, become entrenched with that program and, you know, cherishes it as a
Yeah.
great camp that's here for the community.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sides to that. It's, you know, the camp, the kids, the families who count on it, the employees who look forward to it, you know.
The experience.
Yeah,
It's the lost year,
it really is.
the whole year.
Hmm.
All right. We have more cancellations to look at, don't we?
Well, just to consider, just so you know, what's coming on in July with Friday on the Commons is July 10th is Just Beachy, which is supposed to be water activities and a movie. And then the July 24th is the wind down in the park. And so, clearly you can see two problems right now is, again, we're back to the congregation issue is one thing, but one element is, there's supposed to be a water theme with one, which can be a little bit challenging. And then, of course, the wind down the park is well attended, and then you kind of get into that element as well and what's permissible. We don't necessarily need to make that decision today, but Kathy and I talked about it, and as anybody who's planned an event knows, you do need to get those things in order and start planning with some of those. And there's some food vendors that would come because they still are doing that, but then there's a question about some of these other operators and whether they're willing to and what their level of liability is if they bring this type of equipment. So again, we don't need to make that decision tonight, but it feels like we were 30 days ago talking about the issue we just voted on again, and the whole lost year element.
And I think we're going to continue to be in this situation until.
Yep.
I-
Yes. How far out do we have to make this call?
Well, I mean, honestly, we're right there now. I mean, if you've planned events,
Yeah.
you need some lead up time, and the one on July 10th is coming up pretty quickly. And if we push this to the 15th, it's 4 weeks of planning and trying to get everything together. And it's a very short window.
Is the 10th? The 10th is the
Just
water-
BT.
Beachy?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the Just Beachy. Yeah, I personally think that we're gonna have a hard time pulling off a water event. It's too much contact, too many, we don't even know what's happening right now, what's gonna be lifted, what's gonna be allowed.
I say we just go ahead and do what seems like there's no choice. We're going to have to cancel these two events. And I think that if anything, for some reason, changed dramatically between now and then, you could just have like a bring your own picnic party on the Commons, and people would probably be thrilled to get outside and be around other people. So, I mean, at this point, what choice do we have?
Could we punt it to August, or is that just back up on other events?
Well,
I'm not proposing canceling all of them. I'm just proposing the July events.
We've thought about maybe one of the more, let's say things are better in July, as Valerie knows, we were doing a totally rad just to kind of fill out the schedule a little bit, but it might be better to take one of these more successful events that people identify with and maybe pull out the totally rad and put this in there if August that can happen, right?
Yep.
So maybe one of the ways we handle this is that, at this point, essentially July is maybe canceled unless something happens that we can pull off something on July 24th and keep ourselves a little bit mobile and agile. I think, the 10th comes into everything we had with the summer camp, right? I mean, we even kicked that to later, and, we're seeing that it doesn't look like the first couple weeks of July are going to provide us those opportunities to have any gathering. But if things change, we could be flexible on the second one, because I think we're just going to need that more time on that. And one of the other things that, just to be clear on this point too, is Kathy and I talked about is, you definitely don't want to take one of your successful events that people are familiar with, like, and enjoy, and water it down to the point of people go, oh yeah, that one wind down on the Commons was it was kind of really just not what I expected, right? You'd rather just leave an event. You'd rather not have the event than have a bad experience, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate
Yeah,
to
I mean, the
go to that.
concern with that statement, Seth, and you're absolutely right, but the concern with that is that no matter what happens going forward, it's going to be a slower entry back into these events. It's going to be a different type.
Yeah, it's just different, period.
It's going to
Well
be
taken.
different no
Well
matter
taken.
what. So I think no matter how we cut it, the events are not going to be the same as they were in the past going forward, regardless. But, like you said, you had spoken to Kathy, and Kathy and I chatted as well. And you know, the committees all agree that if something were to arise where we are able to put together a function, then yes, we would start swapping out, you know, the smaller scale events for the more memorable things and see what we could put together. So I think it's a great alternative right now to just say that if we're able to do some of these things, then we'll work fast and furiously to try to do it.
Yep.
If anybody can, it's Kathy.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are absolutely hoping the fall events can occur. I mean, that is our real hope.
Yeah.
When do you have to decide for Poolsville Day?
What's that?
How much time do you have to decide for Poolsville Day?
We haven't gotten into that, but I know Kathy's getting a little nervous just because, you know, as time marches on and trying to plan for things. I mean, maybe the flip side is so many places have canceled their events. Maybe they'll be eager to assist with ours, you know, if we do have something. But yeah, that is getting a little bit more concerning as the weeks go by.
And probably can't make it later in the year because of all the fears of a second go round of COVID.
Yeah.
That's correct. And then you start getting
Everybody's talking about the fall season and the fall flu season, and
well, then we already have events planned on some of those as well. And there's certain days we have to stay away from because of holiday related issues. So it really does start becoming a condensed opportunity to plan for events on other weekends. You're right, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So do
Next.
you want another vote or we,
No, I just think what we'll take away is that we'll anticipate that July is canceled unless we can put something together. So I don't think I'm going to formally announce definitely the June 24th because it's so far late. But we could probably just verbally state to folks that it really looks unlikely anything will happen before July 15th based on what we know as of today. Because of all the planning and everything else that has to occur with this.
And Link just sent in a text. Isn't there a June 4th Poolsville Day committee meeting too coming up?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
they may make some
There is.
decisions.
It's June 4th. Yeah.
Got it.
Oh, you know, they're
Just
going to have
say-
a lot to discuss that day.
Right. Probably just again move forward with the plan as is for now. But look at any possible early cancellation dates that have like non-refundable deposits and things like that.
Well,
Yeah.
we've looked at that too, yes, correct.
Got it. Good.
Thank
Can't
you.
lose. Let's do it.
all right, and Seth, you have recycling costs with Bates as our.
Next item.
in
Yeah.
here.
So you've seen my staff report if you looked at it in the packet. Let me start by saying this, that's not in the staff report. When I first arrived, they communicated with me probably sometime in late January, early February about this issue. Probably early February, about desiring a change in the cost and this recycling circumstance that you see in my staff report. And I told them, look, you know, the contract doesn't require us to make a change. You know, we don't really have to, and so we're not going to. And so that's bought us about 5 months of what it did, 3 to 5 months. And we're here now, and of course, recycling costs have not gone down. If anything, they've gone up a little bit. And a lot of that's just the fact that the bulk buyers of recycling are no longer taking recycling because it's not as clean material as was being shipped to them. And so it's basically getting second and third grade quality that requires more processing. So they've decided to take less of that. That's impacted the recycling market over the last 2.5 years very substantially. Other communities are going through this. Some communities have, you know, weighed not recycling just because the cost isn't there, and the fact that some less recycling may even end up in the landfill just because of disposal cost issues, depending on where you're at. And so Bates has come to us and says, look, you know, when we had this contract, it cost us nothing to get rid of recycling. We didn't make any money. We didn't lose any money. We just were able to dump it for zero. But now what was once zero, you know, on July 1, 2017 is now 130 tons, $130 per ton for them to dispose of. And on average is about 200 tons that is collected in the town of Poolsville. So you do the math, the 200 tons times $130 a ton gets you about $26,000 annually. So that was a cost that they had not anticipated occurring. And that cost may go up a little bit more too. And from a business standpoint and practice, I think you can understand the situation which they're in and why they're making this request. I also did a theoretical calculation. If it went up another $20 to $150 a ton times our 200 tons, you're at 30,000. So it's a $4,000 increase. Bates is asking us, to pay this because it was an unanticipated cost. I've got a recommendation in here that we try and split it 80-20. We maybe pay the 80, they pay 20, just so there's some sort of balance to that. That's my recommendation. You can, discuss this, ask me some question, but that's really the crux of it. And I should probably hit the one point that I almost glazed over was, why don't we just tell them, too bad, is a contract, you made it, you deal with it, you live with it. But, what we don't want to get into a situation is say, okay, if that's the way you want to play, we'll stop taking recycling. You can sue us in court. It'll take some time to get into court and handle this issue. In the meantime, recycling's piling up. We'll take the risk of the $1,500 a day for not, enacting this. And we'll see if the judge, based on amount and evidence, says this is an impact on all businesses in the industry, whether he weighs that they should have to pay the $1,500 and, whether we acted in good faith or not. So we could go down this protracted and be 100% right legally, get all the fees owed to us. But if they decide to take the route that, we're not going to take recycling, or, maybe the service and quality accidentally becomes less than what we're used to, I'm not sure that really behooves us either.
So Jay, does Bates kind of have us over a barrel here because of
Well,
where the courts are at?
I mean, we actually have them over a barrel, as Seth was talking about, in the fact that the contract was written one-sided, that we could get out of it, but they couldn't. So, I mean, that's a positive, and that's what bought you 4 or 5 months. But the reality is, you cannot make somebody perform, continually at their loss. And I think this becomes something where they would say, best case, all right, we're going to dispute this and we're still going to collect your waste. That's your best case scenario. And we'll go into court and we'll eventually get it heard. And I think the court, as Seth told you, is going to look at the entire situation and say, these are unforeseen circumstances. They're almost like a force majeure circumstance beyond these people's control. And it's unfair. They rewrite the contract based on that. And you're back where you started. Courts are closed, more or less, except for emergency situations, which at this point in time, the contract dispute would not rise to the level of. Now, if you have trash sitting in the street, that might be something different. But they're closed for the foreseeable future. The orders have come out, even though you've heard they may open in June, they're still rolling this stuff out based on the orders that you might not have jury trials till October. And that's the ones that were pending. So, by the time you get this resolved in court, and remember, court isn't just going to say, yeah, you're right. And there's an expense to that as well. So I don't think it's the court problem that has over us a barrel. It's that when you do all the math and move forward, you're going to have to be looking at saying we're spending some additional money and problems anyway. Would it be better to try to reform the contract to be something still favorable, but at least it moves forward?
So Seth,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Martin, can you recap real quick, just for anybody who is listening, how this cost became?
Certainly. Again, the biggest issue is that the bulk buyers of recycling were for a long time willing to accept lower quality material dumped in their country and accept it and sort through it and go through it and refine basically the fact that plastic was getting dumped that was either itself dirty and not clean, or else there was things that weren't supposed to be in there and they had to separate them at their cost. And, they said no more to this, basically, recycling that's supposed to be usable in a fairly quick fashion. Shouldn't have to sort through it and go through it. And they said, no more to this. We've got enough recyclables in our country. We're not going to take any more of this. And so basically now recycling is looking for a home to go to. And if you're going to get rid of it, now you're going to have to pay for it, is what's happened. So in 2.5 years, it's gone from a profitable market to one that is absolutely not profitable, essentially, for the most part at all, because you have to now pay for it to get rid of it. And so essentially, mountains of recycling have no place to go. And that's why I said this is not unique to our area. This happened across the whole entire country. In some places, it's actually become cheaper just to put the recycling in with the general trash, because the dumping costs are less expensive for regular trash than it is trying to recycle this.
Wow.
And if you look up this, you'll find it all over. I mean, it's just flipped in 2.5 years.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, because I know that there's going to be some
So is
questions.
it mostly the cardboard or the plastics or the bottles?
I think it's all the above.
The problem.
I think it's a little bit of all the above. I mean, it started out with some of the glass as well. In my area, they don't accept glass anymore. I have to take it somewhere just to dispose of the glass if I want to recycle glass.
Okay.
And Jay, what are your thoughts on Seth's suggestion of 80-20?
Yeah, Seth and I have talked about this extensively, and I think that, without broadcasting our strategy here, it's not really related to the mechanics or the metrics of the economics for recycling. It's related to the cost avoidance of legal proceedings for everybody. So there is a cost avoidance on their end for negotiating, and I think that's what it's trying to recapture. One of the biggest things you got to keep in mind, because a lot of people are, they look at it and say, we had a deal, we had a contract. What's the story? The element of this contract that we're falling out about is a pass-through, really. I mean, this is a tipping fee that's getting charged by a government entity, and whether they could anticipate it or not, it's not like they're charging you for increased fuel costs or increased labor costs or increased profit costs. So, that weighs heavily on a decision eventually. So I think that, the negotiating strategy is the way to go. And, that's the times we're changing.
Seth, did they actually give you proof of all this?
No, they did not. I did not ask them. I figured that question could come up and we could definitely ask for that. They did proffer, sharing their tipping fees. They had no problem with that at all. And I mean, if I thought this was an anomaly case, I would have said, I'm going to need a little bit more information. But I know where the whole industry has been for a couple of years, so I can't imagine why they would be exempt from this significant change.
Well, I think Jim and Valerie, you ought to remember, and so should Martin and Carrie, that I think when we were questioned about why did we pick Bates, we said because they were the cheapest or the least expensive. And I think at that time, Wade said one of the reasons why is because they have their own recycling,
Sortation.
which then they would use in that money to help offset the costs. So I find it a little ironic that all of a sudden, when they come in with these tipping fees, they're tipping it in their own recycling place unless they shut down their own recycling place. Now, I understand that, a lot of the stuff that used to be shipped overseas to China and stuff, a lot of that stuff is still sitting on the docks in LA and San Francisco and other places because China and the Philippines and some of these other places aren't taking it. But anyways.
Is there anything in our original contract that states that they were sorting it to, themselves?
That's what we were told.
Yeah, they do sort it. They have their own sortation facility, but they still pay somebody to take it after it gets sorted.
Okay.
So it's a good point, Jerry, but they, and it is, none of us we know that this has been a good contract for us too. And a good contract for Bates. And, and I do believe, and Seth, unless you can tell me otherwise, they've actually picked up their game, done better. They've had an increased recycling load. There's no doubt about that. What does it look like in terms of the overall contract? How have they done lately?
Well, I mean, from all impressions that I've heard,
It wasn't been responsive. Trash business and tough business, quite frankly.
Seth, I can't hear you.
Yeah,
I think it's simple, like, dismissed, handle it the right way.
You guys, Seth is talking like some sort of Martian language here.
Yeah.
you sound like Darth Vader right now. Something's happened to your
Yeah, pick up your microphone, Seth. Something's going on
Microphone.
there.
It's still bad.
Still bad. Keep talking.
maybe eventually this will break.
There you go. You're better now.
So, you know,
Repeat everything you've said for the last 30 minutes, but do it quickly.
No,
Perfect.
essentially, I mean, the thing with the trash businesses, they've been responsive at the end of the day. And you got to remember, there's a lot of demands. I mean, the recycling cans get broke. People aren't happy where they're put. They've been very responsive. They replied to every email. Every time Maggie sends one, says, look, this person's having an issue or something's been missed. And they say, we'll get back to it. So in terms of that level, I've been pretty impressed with it, their service and everything else. And I have heard from most everybody that they've really picked up their game and have done well. So there's something to be said there as well, in regards to the level of service that they've provided us.
Okay. It's good to hear. I know it's totally unanticipated, and it's probably not the beginning or the end of the of COVID related changes, which this, I would say, also has had an influence on this too. So more stuff coming in, more recycling going out. I'm sure their volume is up quite a bit as well, which has exacerbated it. So I like the solution as proposed by Jay and Seth.
I agree.
So what are your next steps now, Seth?
I would call them and say, the will of and the vote of the commission is to, go to this 80-20 split. We understand that, you've been absorbing this cost for us for a while, but I mean, it's unanticipated on both sides. So we should eat a little bit of both, and we're taking on 80% with the expectation that maybe fees will still increase. So, I mean, 80% of 30,000, I think, we're being fairly fair. I think that leaves them paying about, 6,000,
yeah. I'm good with that.
Me too.
They would be required to submit their tipping fee bills to see, basically how much.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask them. I'm sure they'll give them to me. I don't know this place called Kit Kat Road that they take it to. And then they said the other place was Waste Management and maybe the Frederick area. So I'm getting the impression that they're not even doing much sorting of their own anymore. Now, I didn't get into that weeds, but based on what they said, they take it to.
Seth, Bates and Waste Management are basically the same company. So they're probably taking it from Bates to their waste management company for sortation. So if you see fees going to Waste Management, it's because they're going there to be sorted.
Waste Management or Unity? It used to be Bates and Unity.
No, Waste Management's part of it now too.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, no worries. So it's good. We have a strategy. Hit them
right.
back up and see what they say, Seth.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
You want to vote on that? So that,
Let's do a vote just so as a form.
You want to vote on that?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion. I'm not sure I'm going to get it right. I'm going to make a motion that we submit a proposal of an 80-20 split on the cost of recycling to Bates.
Second.
All in favor?
Wait a minute, can I make an amendment to that? Thinking about it, could we say 80-20 not to exceed X amount of dollars?
I don't see how we can do that, Jerry, because you're talking about what if we increase our recycling, our volume?
I mean, it's all based on tonnage, so how can we? I mean, we could easily do a percentage. I don't know that we could put a cap on it.
Yeah, because what would the X amount be?
Well, 30,000, if we're saying $30,000, you know,
Mhm.
not to exceed 30 grand. Now, as you know,
Oh,
if you're a contractor, and someone sets a not to exceed limit, you're gonna try and spend up to that not to exceed limit. But, you know, at least we might have a little more thing where we could negotiate later on or reduce our costs, 'cause that's what I'm concerned about.
well, my concern with that would be exactly what you just said. I mean, you know, if you tell somebody I need a bathroom and I won't spend more than $70,000, you're spending $69.95, believe me. So,
As long as Seth can get the provables for the actual invoice costs,
that shouldn't be.
and he can get his hands on that, then I don't think we have any danger of voting for the 80-20 split on it. I'd want to make sure that we can get
the invoices on the tipping fees. Okay, all right.
You okay? You comfortable with that, Seth?
Yeah, absolutely. And we all hope this drops too, because I mean, if it drops, then we're at 80-20% of a less number.
Yep.
Got it.
All right,
Nice
so
math. Nice math,
we-
Seth.
we still have the original motion and
Uh,
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And lastly, we have your town manager's report.
Yes, certainly. Let me find where I buried it. We go here real quick. So the pickleball court, if you haven't seen it, is painted. We're just waiting for the nets at this point. Those nets should be back in the next couple weeks. Well, the order of those nets should be here shortly. So we're looking forward to that. And that really is pretty much the final element to getting that together. We'll put an announcement on Facebook once that's open as well.
And the people that use the pickleball courts are very happy with it, from a number of people I've talked to. So,
Yeah,
and they're using their portable nets until we get the real ones in. They can't wait.
Yeah. All I've heard is positive comments about the progress,
Nope, they love it.
which is
job.
good.
It's
So
it's the biggest thing we could do for them. Great.
Upcoming this month in June is the Parks and Rec Commission is going to meet on June 3rd, so this Wednesday at 7 via Zoom. PC is going to be on June 10th, excuse me, via Zoom as well. And then BZA on the 24th with Zoom as well. So all the meetings Zoom.
Seth, not to interrupt, what's BZA meeting about?
They have the Romero fence case. They're on Fisher Avenue. Their fence is not where it should have been, as well by Tom Fox and Fisher Avenue. And then
So we're asking for a waiver. They want to.
they received a variance. Long story, try to keep it short. They received a variance. The fence may not be where it was supposed to be. So there's a discussion about augmenting that location and what they need to meet based on the original approval. The Brightwell fence issue that Tom just talked about, if we're expedient enough to get from Planning Commission on the 10th to the 24th, that's my goal, so that he can kind of move through the process fairly streamlined. But that's, again, maximum height of a fence is 6 feet. He's requesting 8 currently. That could go up as well. So that's why the BZA is meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When are we going to have the planning commission agenda out for the public?
Probably this Friday.
Okay.
So, Martin, that's gonna be a long meeting. You might as well bring dinner twice. So, yes.
Good job, Martin.
Jay, these are your next upcoming meetings, by the way, except for Parks and Rec.
I got it. I'm coming for dinner.
Okay, well, don't be anywhere else.
Seth, will you be able to, is that going to be a live meeting?
We're going around the world.
So can you send a link to all of us?
Yeah, I'll push it out to the public meetings, you know, the YouTube public meetings. So I'll share that link with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Is that YouTube or Zoom?
Well, what we do, Jerry, is we're on Zoom right now collectively, but I'm able to push this meeting out to YouTube right before it starts. And so everybody who's at home can watch it
Okay.
right now live.
Watching it through YouTube, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
send it out to YouTube.
Jim, did you want to add anything about fair access?
I mean,
I'm sorry, Seth, are you?
You know, let me
interrupt.
take a look at one other thing. We got so deep into this other topic. Of course, you know, the ZTAs are going to be on your next meeting as well, just to bring you up to date on that element. And then the only two other things on here is that I mentioned we were going to apply for a Safe Routes to School grant on Oxley Farm and then on Bottomer a little bit to provide connection. But when you apply for a Safe Routes to School grant, you have to have a certain amount of engineering sort of done, what they call 30% process. And we don't have that done, so we can't really rush it in a short period of time. But we would like to maybe do Safe Routes to School for that section next year. In the meantime, we'll get that minimal level of engineering in order between now and then so that they can feel comfortable with at that 30% level. Why it's important to them is if they're going to award you a grant, they want to make sure that you have the capability of putting it in. In certain circumstances, people say, oh, you know, the road right away is 55 feet. We can put a sidewalk in there. The surveyors come out and realize it's an old state road. It's only 30 feet wide. You're going to have to get easements from property owners and all those sort of things. So it's a cursory look to make sure that it can be installed. And that's why it's important to them, because they don't want to be funding things that then require additional matches that were unforeseen. So I just wanted to bring you up to that. And then randomly, not quite as exciting, you all have mail here, you know, either your MML magazine or some other stuff that's come in. So, you know, I feel like the parent whose child is coming back from college to pick up all the mail.
Well, you told us to stay away.
Yeah.
I think you made a motion and a vote, if I recall.
I have,
Bring you our laundry?
I have three questions. One, what's the story with the crossing signs?
We have all the parts available for that. And what we were waiting for is staff to come back to full capacity so we can install those. It's been a little struggle just to keep the grass cut and some other basic things in order around the town. And so once after June 15th, I can't promise, you know, the next day, but we'd like to, you know, get some of those things done that have been delayed.
Close enough. The county roads, have they been turned over to us yet?
Jay, go ahead.
We redrafted the deed for the third time, and this one now has Carrie's signature on it. And so it was sent to the county again, and we haven't gotten anything back.
You're taking a playbook from the state with the problems we had with their roads. Okay.
We may own them 3 times over at this point. You can't say. So.
One last thing on the census. I just checked before the meeting start, and we're at 81.5% people have responded. And for our census tract, which is basically from here to the river down to Dawsonville area, it's about 74.3. At a census meeting last Wednesday night, they're coming out with some yard signs. I've asked for about 16 of them, and I'm going to put some by our entrance signs. I've asked Roger Hayden if I could place one on his property, another gentleman on his property, and then we're going to sprinkle them out maybe in Dickerson and around town, but so that we can maybe hopefully get up to 90% or better. So anyways, and at that meeting, everybody was singing our praises that we had such a great response rate from our citizenry.
Great.
That's all I have.
Did you want to add anything, Jim?
I just one thing going back to Seth's, you know, I'm going to say that you haven't heard the last of me yet on the ZTAs, and I understand they're going to be in front of us. That's what you said, Seth, our next meeting.
That's correct. That's correct.
And-
The 15th.
And I have to tell you that again, I think the ZTAs are bigger than what, they're bigger items than what deserve to be on a small screen. And I think it's something that potentially they need to play out in public. And they also don't necessarily need to be linked as well. So I'm a little concerned that those are items that are again going to play up on the small screen. And I think our residents, they're bigger decisions than what our residents deserve having just playing out in front of whatever level of audience we have watching us on YouTube right now. So I'm not going to sit there and tell you that they can't be on the agenda, or I'm going to stand on my head to make sure they're not on the agenda, because I can't do either. But I just think it's inappropriate again. And I say to the group, what's the rush? Oh, okay, crickets. Good enough. That's my opinion. So you can keep it on the agenda. I plan on being at the meeting, but I just think that, my long-term history of this, I just, and the things that I've said all along about the ZTAs in particular, bad for the town and not a direction we want to take. And it's especially not great if we're going to play it out in front of a little mini audience on versus having it be in a meeting where we can actually talk about it to each other and whoever else might show up. Just my opinion.
Well, thank you for that.
All
Okay.
right. On that lovely note.
I got to keep going on fair access just for a minute. So you guys, as you know, what the vote was taken, the budget was approved unanimously. As most people will tell you, we never ever have gotten even close to being this far, to being in a budget for the total rebuild/replacement of Poolsville High School. We're going to come out with some more information on it, but really the fair access team is more about just keeping the ball moving. We've got other fish to fry. This one's not going to be, even though the vote's been taken, several council members, including people that have advocated for us, have said up front that if there's ever been a budget that hasn't been etched in stone, this is one of them. So the advocacy efforts are going to keep on going. I wrote personally to all the council members and thanked them for their vote and for standing up for us despite other budget pressures, and also for their leadership regarding the COVID-19. And I heard back from quite a few of them. We also have a formal letter going out from Fair Access to all the council members, and we're crafting one that'll go also to Dr. Smith as well as the county executive. So it's a big deal, guys. You're talking about a town and a committee made up of people like us that have achieved what is essentially 65 to what may end up being a $90 million ask. And that's got to be the most amount of money for the least amount of people advocating. It said, not etched in stone. We've got work to do in front of us, but it's a very big deal. As said, you didn't see a lot. We put a little something on Facebook about it, but we're definitely not counting our ducks until they're all lined up on a permanent basis. But this is a huge step. That money stayed in the budget despite immense pressure. And I want to say for sure, and I'll say it to anybody that's listening, the leadership that we've gotten from, thanks to Val and her relationship with Andrew Friedson, are the leadership that we got from Craig Rice, from Hans Reamer, from Tom Hucker, from the other council members, from Mark Elrich, who did what he said he was going to do, which is a big deal, and especially in this terrible budget times, from Jack Smith, who sat in front of us, whatever it was, 2+ years ago, and told us that he saw that this needed to happen. And then finally, to my fellow Fair Access Committee members, where all we do is just methodically meet and talk about how we're going to advocate and try to make things happen. The group's been amazing, and we're just going to keep chugging along, because this is not the beginning, but kind of like the beginning to the middle, and we've got a ways to go. So just that's an update, but really all of us have to be on our toes continue to work and push and prod our council members in the best possible way. We've been told by many of them, fighting is not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah.
Arguing is not going to get us anywhere. Working with people has gotten us somewhere, and bringing the facts to them in a cogent manner that they thought they could back and stand behind, that's what's worked. So we're going to just keep doing that. And as I said, hey, it's pretty cool. Our town's got a almost $4 million budget. We're talking about, anywhere between 65 and $90 million is where it's going to be invested into this community. It's as big as it gets, and it feels like we're kind of just getting started.
Yeah,
So-
and Jim, on that note, I do want to say that there was a big movement at that meeting to push us aside for a rebuild at South Lake.
Yep, I know. Yep, there was some last minute jostling going on there.
Once again, our guy came through and was like, I'm not having any part of that. They tried to bump us that
Yep.
very day. So once again, I appreciate everything that Andrew has done for us and how he has stood up for us, along with all of our other, county council guys, Board of Education people. So thank you for everything that you guys are doing. I just tore all the dead trees out of my fence line that they planted 10 years ago for the build. They're
Good job.
all dead. So I'll be looking for some new ones.
All right, we'll talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Can block those blinding lights that are screaming in my window.
I don't know about those, Val. That's too bad. They're probably somebody's probably filming you. So watch out.
I already got new curtains. I'd rather have security out over, my eyesight.
Gotcha. All right, there you go.
Well, it was looking like Jay was about to jump into the water there. So perhaps that means it's time to adjourn.
Oh, I'm going to say one more. I want to say one more thing too. I want to thank our board for not overstepping their bounds and not and acting as a unified force to support fair access. And we appreciate it. And you've kind of let us run with it. And the results have been delivered so far. And I really appreciate it because there could be pushback. And there is pushback. I've had some resident pushback too. But we really appreciate the board standing up, the help Seth's given us. I don't want to, Wade was very instrumental in all this too. He, his input was amazing. So, but the board itself and supporting for access and supporting the initiative and realizing that there's some things that we could probably do for our town that that could be beneficial by, that could be benefited by us standing up in other directions. We've muted that in order to be the town that's unified behind this proposal. So I truly appreciate that. And it's made a big difference knowing that like our council members, our board members have our backing because we've had to have a unified front in order to achieve what we've achieved. So
Jim, on that front with the elected side, there's recommendations coming or have come out regarding the primary and who to support, correct?
Are you talking about for Board of Education?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that came out, we've had it out for about a week now.
That's what I thought.
And the two, and it's still not too late to vote, has been,
Tomorrow morning.
right, Shebra Evans and Sunil. And I'm not going to try and pronounce Sunil's last name, but they were the board recommendations from Fair Access. And thanks for bringing it up, Seth. We actually we've had a very, very low turnout so far. So anybody that's sitting on a ballot, it's got to be put back out there ASAP.
Tonight.
Yeah, tomorrow. It has to be mailed tomorrow.
Well,
Has to be postmarked.
tomorrow. My bad.
Tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And there was a thing saying where there's some sort of kerfuffle between the county and the state over the mailing of the ballots. So,
Yeah, let's just stick with, you got to be postmarked tomorrow. So if anybody's got one, anybody's listening to us on YouTube, you gotta get it done and get it in the mail tomorrow.
right.
All righty.
Vote, vote, vote.
I make a
All right.
motion to
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you all. Have a good evening.
All right, have a good
Make a
one.
motion.
We're gonna adjourn.
Make a
You gotta vote
motion
to
to
adjourn.
adjourn. Make
I
a
made
motion.
a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks.
Aye.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.